NBA Draft Week is filled with excitement that all 30 NBA fanbases can get involved in because everyone has a chance to acquire some young talent at this time regardless of where their pick lands, and on top of that, trades are always a possibility on draft night as well, using these picks to possibly get some other assets. Most of the fun and attention tends to go towards the players expected to be the first names off the board, but historically, we always see guys who slip down the draft board emerge as highly impactful players, and that's what we will be focusing on in today's video. Today we'll be discussing 5 players in particular expected to be drafted later on this year that I think can prove to be some hidden gems of this year's class. These are players that, from what I've seen, are not expected to be lottery picks or even first round selections in some cases, yet I truly believe they can come in and develop into long-term productive contributors at the NBA level for years to come. Before we start though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first hidden gem in this year's draft that we'll be discussing today is Jaden Hardy from the G League Ignite program. Hardy entered this year as a player that was viewed as a top 5 talent in the draft class. Needless to say, that is no longer the way that he's viewed by those that analyze the draft though. However, while the hype surrounding Hardy faded away pretty hard as the season progressed, I still see the potential in him that was clearly there a year ago. Choosing to go straight from high school to the G League is always going to be a challenge for someone like Hardy, and it's the kind of risk that can either reward you in a big way like we saw with Jalen Green in last year's draft when he got selected 2nd overall, or it can hurt you like we're seeing now with Hardy. Hardy had a pretty inconsistent season against G League competition, where he did average an impressive 18 points per game, but shot the ball rather poorly, making just 35% of his shots and 27% of his threes. He was used as the team's go-to scoring option, and he was forced to try to create a ton for himself, which is something he's always been naturally good at up to this point, but doing so against high school competition and then doing so against professional athletes are two different things. While his struggles shooting the ball are worrisome to many scouts, I think if you give Hardy a couple of years to get comfortable, he'll be able to show everyone why he was one of the top-ranked recruits in this class. He's a 6'4" guard with a 6'9" wingspan, he's got amazing burst and a quick first step, and he's comfortable shooting from all 3 levels. He's projected to be picked near the end of the first round this year, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he proves to be a top 10 player from this year's draft when it's all said and done. The next hidden gem we'll be discussing today is Malaki Branham from Ohio State. Branham came into the season as a player that wasn't really on anyone's draft radar at all, but he basically forced his way into becoming an NBA prospect with his play on the court that turned enough heads to get the recognition that he deserves. Even still though, he's another player projected to be near the end of the first round, but there could be so much more in him than we might think. Branham just turned 19 years old in May, making him one of the youngest players in the draft, and yet he is coming off of a freshman season in college where he was one of the most productive and efficient volume scorers we saw in the country. As the season went on, he became more and more confident and comfortable with his game, and by the end of the season, he was posting averages of about 14 points per game while shooting an incredibly efficient 50% from the field and 42% from 3. He's so smooth with the ball in his hands, he gets to his spots, he can knock down jumpers off the catch and off the dribble, and his ability to create is something that could be used by any NBA team. He's a guard with good size at 6'5", with a 6'10" wingspan as well, so even though he will probably need to improve in other areas of the game, such as knowing when to give the ball up and playing more selflessly at times, he should end up being a lethal scoring threat in the NBA. The next hidden gem we'll be discussing today is Patrick Baldwin from Milwaukee. Baldwin has a somewhat similar story to Jaden Hardy in that he entered this season as a prospect viewed as a potential top 10 pick, but instead of committing to a top collegiate program like most highly rated recruits do, and he was even offered to play to Duke if he wanted to, he instead chose to play for mid-major Milwaukee where his father coaches. At Milwaukee, he would be thrust into a lead role as a go-to scorer who was tasked with creating a ton for himself this year. He struggled in that high usage role, he shot the ball poorly because of it, and as a result, his draft stock has tanked to where he is now being predicted to go in the second round. He also suffered a few minor injuries throughout the course of the year that forced him to miss about 2/3 of the season, which hurt his stock even more, and all of that has snowballed to where he is now. The thing about Baldwin and the kind of player he is, though, is that he shouldn't have ever been a number one option kind of player in the first place. Baldwin is at his best when he can play a more secondary role offensively, who can create a little bit when the opportunity presents itself, but is mostly a shooter who plays off the ball. Had he taken that offer to play for Duke when it was offered to him to play alongside Paolo Banchero, I guarantee he would have looked much better overall, and his value as a tall, long defender who knocks down shots and cuts off the ball would have been more visible, as opposed to having to do everything for his lowly Milwaukee team. In the NBA, Baldwin is obviously not going to have to step into any team's rotation having to create at the level that he did in college, so whoever gets him should be able to recognize his strengths and utilize them within their rotation. The next hidden gem in this year's draft is Nikola Jovic from Serbia. Jovic is one of the most intriguing international talents in the draft this season, but there is a level of mystery about him that could see him slide to the end of the first round. As a 6'10" forward, he's a player that can give you a little bit of everything out on the floor. He grew up actually playing as a guard, so he developed those kind of skills as a ball handler, creator, and shooter from a young age. Then when he hit his growth spurt, he transferred his guard skills into a big man's body, making him one of the most skilled players at his height you'll see available this year. He has a very good feel for the game, he showed that he could handle the ball and play some point forward and create for others in his time in the Adriatic League overseas, and he's fairly quick and agile for someone his size too. Right now he's an average shooter at best, and he will need to put on some weight if he's going to survive the physicality of the NBA, but both of those things have shown progress lately, and there's no reason to believe that he can't improve as a shooter or put on some muscle over time. And finally, the last hidden gem we'll be discussing today is Dalen Terry from Arizona. Terry is currently being overshadowed by two of his Arizona teammates, Benedict Mathurin and Christian Koloko, in draft discussions this year, which makes sense because they were more of the stars of the team, but in the NBA, the fact of the matter is that everyone can't be a star, and you need guys that are good role players, and Terry is that kind of player to a T that will excel in his role at the next level. These kind of players are never glamorized and always end up falling in the draft, but historically you look back at previous drafts and wonder how players like this fell so late. He's a very disruptive defender, he's an active off-ball player that makes good cuts and slashes hard to the basket, where he finishes very strong and efficiently, and while three-point shooting isn't necessarily one of his biggest strengths, he did make them at a slightly above average rate last season, and he's continued to improve there over time. He impacts the game and makes winning plays with and without the ball, and you need players that can do that beyond the box score to be successful in the NBA. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you think is a hidden gem in this year's draft. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.